right now for the first picks of each side. Sometimes we see Matilda get picked up blue side, and then the other side will pick up a Cho, pair it up with a Khalid or a Gatot, or you go ahead and pick up the best heroes that you can pair with a Matilda that like to be aggressive and entry. I'm thinking about the alphas of the world. That's why Suyo has sort of fallen out. It's not always just going to be in the first 3 picks. You can see it come in blue 2, blue 3, or red 3. So with the Gata Kacha ban, that's usually a signal that the team will be thinking about an Eve in the blue 2 or blue 3. So that might be a pick that's going to be coming in their future that Indonesia might read into, making a Valentina pickup in the first 2 picks possible. And there it is. We were mentioning earlier, Chip is not a red side ban anymore. It's good on the blue side because now it forces your opponent to ban out heroes such as the Matilda.
I reckon Mongolia was double guessing themselves, and that's why it took the whole duration of the countdown for them to go, all right, we'll give the chip blue too, so that we don't have to wait and think about it anymore.
Yeah.
So that leaves their third ban open, and there's a Matilda. The aforementioned Matilda, she's so good. She wasn't touched in the patch, was she? The whole airborne thing, but that's it.
That was it.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's just how good she is right now. Formation breaking is the main descriptor that we go for
And
Matilda.
Formation making.
And
it
yeah.
makes so many weird picks just broken. Bane has seen a rise in picks almost single-handedly because of Matilda.
Yeah, and this drafting sequence usually means a Suyo or a Cho might be coming in on the blue side first pick of Mongolia. But knowing that they're up against Indonesia, I will not take it against them to actually contest Hilda. So it's a very difficult choice actually for Mongolia what exactly they're going to pick for the first pick, because whatever they leave open, those are 2 powerful picks already and comforts for Indonesia.
That's what I'm saying. Blue side, that 1 pick anymore to dictate isn't worth it. If
Yeah.
anything, that blue 2 chip, that felt like a liability. That felt like, oh man, like, do we really have to? You can see him struggle.
Oh, but we do have a Fanny banned out here by Indonesia in the last ban. Is this a respect ban Fanny for Mongolia?
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised that they would. I think them taking out the Fanny was just them, number 1, respecting it. Number 2, they just make sure that that's just not go up against the Cho anymore.
Yeah, and it's also a proactive ban. They don't have to, you don't have to allow a pick the hard lockdown. Fanny is one of those heroes that demand. If you don't have a hard lockdown for this, like a Kaja, a Kufra, or a Cho, forget about it. And
Yeah.
their first 2 picks make sense. It's because we want to win these fights, and they want to win both cleanup and setup, even Suyo. So good. Like, they can just build around this.
So this is exactly what we were talking about even before the draft started, right? The Hilda coming through, we have the Suyo Eve takeaway, and now Mongolia respond with an Alpha as well as a Moskov here. So technically, what are we thinking about that mid lane presence, right? Because we were talking about the Valentina earlier on. Technically,
Yeah.
as we get into the second phase, wait a second, that's a 1-1.
Whoa.
That's a trademark 1-1.
Yeah, and CW had a stellar performance with the 1-1 when they went up against Egypt. Like, less than 5 deaths, more than 10 kills, even double digits in assists if I'm not mistaken. So right now, Indonesia's looking at it in a way that, all right, we pick up the 1-1, we know what are the best options to deal with it. Burst, pick-off type, that right now, if you go something like, you can't, if you go something like Cho, you can answer it. If you go something like Kaja from Mongolia, you can answer that. You have the Eve there as well. That this is just confidence. That this is Indonesia signaling to Mongolia, whatever you pick, even if you decide to go Farsa, forget about it. It's CW on a 1-1 and he'll be comfortable.
Here's the thing though, if we're talking about comfortability, this is a 1-1 pick into a Moskov. Is this a lane that favors the 1-1 or the Moskov?
I haven't played enough 1-1 myself, but I'd like to think that these two are going to leave it to the early game. Like, for sure, they're going to lane. And then eventually, CW is going to want to leave that lane and then leave it to Garu to wait for that perfect hit. Because that's what the Moskov buys for you. And I think that's why Mongolia wins the first phase. Say what you will about their confidence and how they got like these solid pickups and how that mid duo, the jungler and the mid laner, are super strong. But I think overall, like, you have a solid XP laner, a solid gold laner, and then Alpha who wins. Like, I think, am I weird to say this is the best jungler in the game right now?
The Alpha?
Yeah.
It's contested. It's contested.
Okay, but because of those 3, I think Mongolia are actually setting the pace. They found a way to win blue.
Yeah. In terms of the lane, Mirko did throw up his hands just now. He did signal out 50-50 to us in terms of like the lane duel itself.
There you go.
So let's see if Mongolia will be able to pick something that, if it's not in the lane duel, are you going to make it struggle with being able to hit the weakness points in the team fights?
Forbid
That's why we're
Valentina.
looking for instant burst.
Forbid Valentina, do it.
Yep. Pick up oh, that'll make them very close range, but you would want to steal the real world manipulation. The Akai ban by Indonesia, by the way, is something that we have to talk about. It's a great pickup in the roam, great pickup in the XP. Usually it's the pick that would want to counter something like a Tigreal, but lineups that have a lot of crowd control and want to fight under specific areas will struggle with the presence of an Akai because everything just gets scattered. And Akai is also one of the best EXP leaders you want to pick if you want to break team fighting formations and be able to comfortably team fight under a real world manipulation. So there is the Valentina picked up by Forbid, but Ethan the roamer, yes, that's me correcting myself from what I've said earlier, will pick up a Ella, who people have said is will struggle up against the Eve. No, it thrives against the Eve because one heal gives heal and gives you the movement speed to get out of the real world.
It almost undoes the whole ensnaring effect of the borders
Exactly.
of the real world manipulation. One more pick here for Indonesia. Still lacking that the pickup on Keyboy. Wait, no. This is a roam, Edith.
Yeah, it went rope.
It's an old flame for
flex.
Luke. That's a Uranus.
Now we're gonna see here because these are two somewhat similar. Is Uranus like magical Hilda now?
That's how you soft counter the Hilda.
Let's see.
That was the big question, right? We've talked about how predominant that the Hilda has become in the EXP lane. The big question is, how do you counter it in the lane? We do see the Uranus being picked up. We're going to see if it actually works out. But overall, analysts, what do we think about the drafts?
All right, so this boils down to the Valentina getting the right ultimate, the Primal Wrath of the Edith, because the damage profile right now, outside of the true damage of the Alpha of Mongolia, is not enough for this Uranus. The Uranus pickup might have just been really great to make Mongolia struggle, Indonesia.
Here's my take. Ignore the Uranus.
That's
That's it. Ignore Uranus, and then you win everywhere else. I'm confident. I don't know why, but I feel good for Mongolia today.
So Mongolia for Leo?
Yes.
What about you, Reptar Renmar?
I mean, I did say Indonesia, so you, the
Indonesia?
Australian, you're the tiebreaker right
I
now.
can't. I'm a Desco, so I have to remain neutral.
Oh, come on.
So we're going to ask the casters. Naisu, Mirko, what do you guys think about the drafts?
Thanks so much, guys. Thinking about the draft here, one thing's for sure, we learned that Hilda's hot, peanut butter, and
Super
cats. Super hot. She was first pick. Welcome, guys, to here at the caster, I was going to say desk, the stand. It's me, Naisu, joined with Mirko here to bring you finally the playoffs for the MLBB Open. Day number 1 here, kicking off with Mongolia and Indonesia. I don't know if I should even ask you, Mirko, like, what do you think here? Are you leaning towards Indonesia draft? Do you think Mongolia has the upper hand here, like Leo mentioned?
It really comes down to how they utilize the Uranus, I feel, because for the Uranus, we haven't really seen this, and I'm not too sure if the Uranus is going to go for the Revitalize in the current meta with a lot of other, XP laners, Hylos, Gatot Kacha also going for the Revitalize. Leo did mention that it is a way to technically just match up against the Hilda. I think, though, for Mongolia, it really comes down to the Alpha. I think that's the key right here. If they're able to kite back and forth and choose when to get the Spear of Alpha right, they're going to have a lot of advantages to play with around the neutral objectives.
That's one thing is great, again, as someone who has always loved Alpha as a hero, playing him. He's been shining through the meta that we are in right now, and I would almost arguably say that, yeah, he is probably, based on how many lineups he can fit, he's probably one of the best, if not the best jungler heroes you can bring to the current play and the current meta. And what we're seeing is such a shift, where, again, it's developed, even, man, when you think about it, we've been a part of this since the online qualifiers for everything. Think how much has changed actually from that when we did our first online qualifiers for this whole run leading up to the WEC.
Depends which qualifiers, right? Because some qualifiers, we don't even follow the meta. They make their own meta.
They make their own.
I remember the African qualifiers, amazing time there with the Yin Roam.
Yin
And
Roam,
I've
man.
actually heard some coaches behind the scenes talk about the Yin XP as a way to deal with a lot of these junglers who need to fight, need to brawl it out. Sort of like the Alpha, the Suyos, who really need to go for the contested neutral objective. So, who knows? Maybe we'll see more surprises. We've already seen one here in the playoff with the Uranus walking in. And I just have to say, Naisu, if this Uranus pick works with Revitalize, Mr. Wrecked is ahead of his time. He picked this up in Season 11, I think. And when he picked it up, everybody was trashing him, saying, bro, what is he doing? Maybe he was just ahead of the time. Maybe he knows in 2 years it'll be meta. It'll be good.
It's called
Foresight.
I was gonna say, that's foresight. That's thinking ahead, man. At this point. And It's like they mentioned over on the panelist stand. They're like, you know, if you want the best way to win this game, if you're Mongolia, really is also, yeah, just ignore the Uranus, because the problem is, and especially we're just gonna assume it is a revitalized because that's typically what we see here right now. You're not gonna kill him. Like,
No.
even without the revitalized, he's already almost unkillable.
Yeah.
And obviously he's gonna be utilizing the fact that he is so tanky to play the whole macro of the game. Now, when we talk about like macro, the way that this has fallen into place right now is, you know, I'm not gonna call it. It is kind of a brawl, actually. So whether
the brawl server.
The brawl server, yeah, I think you were quoted for that, right? But like the way you look at it is, you can still, even if you're brawling it out and you're fighting all these early skirmishes, some teams even go as far as like, just ignore these objectives. Like, don't worry about it too much. We're just gonna win these fights and just kind of brute force our way in. To now where you see like, all right, if you have a pig, a hero, for example, that is Uranus, I mean, you're not really going to be joining these fights, right? Unless you're just that stalwart, you're that bulwark for these skirmishes. But you're going to be playing the map, cutting some waves, proxying those waves if you want to. And then eventually, again, Revitalize alone is not only good for him, but once he does join the fights, like, that's good enough to go ahead and help things out. So, as you guys can see, we are going to be talking a little bit more about the matchup while they go ahead and get things situated for us. It is our first time also today that we have moved the players. Now we are on the main stage, I believe it is, which you guys saw the backdrop, you know, of our panel area and everything else. So I can't wait to see this happen. I know there's other matches going on right now too, just like the panel mentioned. So again, if you guys want to stay up to date to everything, head over to IESF.gg. There's 4 quarterfinal matches happening right now.
Then 2 semifinals.
And 2 semifinals. So definitely keep an eye on. I know a lot of people are going to be watching the other matches too and want to see the updates, because this is tough, man. I would say we're in a position now where, you know, I know we had last year over in the WEC24, that was in Iași, Romania, where Philippines won that. At this point, I'm not sure, because we spend so much time talking about meta, for example, and it's because it really does kind of paint the picture of what teams are going to shine. And I would say that there are definitely some teams, Mongolia even being one of them, like the panel mentioned, that can shine with the current state of the game.
Sure, you know, again, it's a very, very aggressive meta, so whoever gets control over the early to mid, usually they just end the game in, what, 12 minutes, 10 minutes?
Before
We've been
15.
seeing super fast games, and I'm not even just talking about, obviously, the games where you would favor one team over the other. I'm talking about the 50-50 games, too. A lot of these games go 10 minutes, 12 minutes. We don't get to see the Evolve Lord in a lot of these matches, so for Mongolia, that's kind of their style for the longest time. Yep, they do take quite a while to download their opponents, but once they get the download, they play in the early game so well. And I think here, unfortunately, I think you brought it up as well, the fact that a lot of teams can go for trades. A lot of teams can actually let go and sacrifice the first few neutral objectives to play for the mid game, to play for the late game. But knowing how both of these compositions were set up, I find it hard to believe that they're going to actually look for trades. You know, both of the compositions are really made to go for neutral objectives, to fight for neutral objectives. One is the out-sustain kind of deal with Rafaela. They have crazy initiation with the Alpha, and a lot of damage with the Hilda in the early game. But yeah, like you mentioned, you want to try to ignore the Uranus. Now, my question is, I think it's easier said than done, is it not?
It is,
Uranus to be ignored in the early game.
Because he's just there. Like,
yeah, and the Valentina can't kill him, the Hilda can't kill him. The Alpha is the only one that can really shred through the Uranus. But again, like we mentioned, Mongolia's composition really depends on the Alpha. If the Alpha goes in, let's say Zixora pops in a Spirit of Alpha to Uranus, Indonesia have already won that fight.
Yeah, and you know, I know they're up against a formidable opponent here in Indonesia, but man, you and I have seen this squad of from Mongolia. Like, they're, you know, under different
banners.
When
Lil Gun, when they were called IC.
Exactly. And even back before, when we first, I would say the world got their first preview of them back in the Asian Championships last year for ISF. And so I feel like if you've been watching competitive MLBB esports for a while and you've seen these names from Mongolia, you know that they have developed quite a bit, you know, from that first preview that a lot of people got last year from them. And even with the change that they've had, they can make things work for them. And again, they have to make it work against a team like Indonesia. So we did get word, guys. We are going to be taking a short break here while they go ahead and set things up for this first match. So sit tight. We'll be back after the break.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're landing in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for the World Esports Championship.
In a world where victories can be measured in gold and silver, some things are priceless. Surely expected, and it is Baron will find him. Can shine for one with a quick trade from Impulse.
Some things are not bought with money.
The base is too open. Now Philippines is now taking the base of Indonesia. Remember their name.
The feeling of standing alongside your fellow countrymen, the emotion, the home crowd, the weight of a whole nation on your shoulders.
Sometimes I get emotional by the fact that I got chosen to be one of the representatives of my country. And yeah, it's just a dream, honestly.
Here, it's not just about the game. It's about the pride that unites us. Every match tells a story.
He needs to some missed shots. Sound picking up another one, another headshot. No way! 4 kills! What has happened?
From every corner of the globe. All eyes on WEC24.
Early 1970s, the world was discovering the boundless possibilities of esports. While esports offered endless enjoyment and addictive allure, it lacked a certain depth and a sense of purpose. It needed something more, something larger than a trophy, something beyond individual gratification. That's when a vision emerged. A vision of uniting the world through esports. The International Esports Federation and the World Esports Championship were born. Its mission was clear: to create a stage where nations could unite and compete for the ultimate title, World Esports Champion. For these athletes and nations, the World Esports Championship was more than just a competition, more than just a game. A chance to make history, to leave a lasting legacy, to inspire a generation, and to represent their nation. Over the years, IESF started achieving greatness, year by year. Korea, Indonesia, Israel, Romania, worldwide. The World Esports capital changed, each year expanding significantly, getting bigger and bigger. Fast forward 15 years, IESF was determined to show the world the most valuable World Esports Championship. 140 nations gathered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The WEC24 story. 2024. Saudi Arabia prepares to host the 16th World Esports Championship after a spectacle made in Iași, Romania by IESF for WEC23. New president, new challenges, and quite a bumpy road ahead. As the calendar turned to January, the national qualifiers took place, breaking dozens of records. In a wingspan of 3 months in every nation across the globe, athletes competed to get one step closer to the World Esports Championship and represent their nation on the global stage. However, as fate would have it, the road to WEC24 was far from smooth. Things went south. 2 out of 3 offline regional qualifiers were forced to go online. Even though that barrier occurred, the online regional qualifiers shattered previous viewership records. The hype for WEC24 was real. Meanwhile, Africa. IESF showed just how much potential is hidden in Africa. Over 180 athletes, 17 nations, and thousands of fans. All in one place for one specific reason: esports. The bumpy road came to an end. The slots for WEC24 were secured and everyone was ready. The much anticipated 16th World Esports Championship set sails. WEC24 Day 1.
no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
This gun was loaded when he was brave, boys. Decided to go for the run. It's the fire. It's the fire. This gun was loaded when he was brave, boys. Decided to go for the run. It's the fire. It's the fire.
I can't help but these, cause they know they can never touch these. So baby, let me talk my shit, or I might just throw another fit. You know I can't help but these, cause they know they can never touch these. So baby, let me talk my shit, or I might just throw another fit.
there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
This gun was loaded when you brave boys decide to go for the run. Just to fire it. Just to fire it. This gun was loaded when you brave boys decide to go for the run. Just to fire it. Just to fire it.
I can't help but these, cause they know they can never touch these. So baby, let me talk my shit, or I might just throw another fit. You know I can't help but these, cause they know they can never touch these. So baby, let me talk my shit, or I might just throw another fit.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being patient with us here while we get this all sorted out. It's me, Naisu, once again, joined with Mirko, and we are waiting for game number 1 here in this best of 3 between Team Mongolia versus Indonesia. So hopefully everything got settled out here,
Hopefully.
so we can jump into the game now.
Yeah, if you guys want to recap real quick, in game number 1, based on the draft, Indonesia went for something kind of crazy. They went for the Uranus in the XP lane for Luke. Don't know if it's a Revitalize or if it's a normal Purify sprint kind of deal for the Uranus, but it's up against a Hilda, Valentina, and the Alpha. A lot of early game aggression, focusing mainly on the neutral objectives for Team Mongolia, but I think it's kind of the same for Indonesia. What I do want to talk about is that Suyo pick, because I think we are currently playing in the patch of the hotfix, so the Suyo has been nerfed quite a bit when it comes to the damage towards objectives.
It's changed a bit. I think he's still going to be, in a way, maybe not so much prioritized, but I think he's still obviously a great choice in the jungle. We were just talking about this before we had that break too, that the fact that the Alpha is such a prominent hero right now in the jungle that fits in pretty much, I would say, almost every team composition that you can literally have for the most part. And then again, while we speculate is pretty much how does Mongolia deal with this Uranus pick? How do they approach the playstyle that we're all so familiar with when it comes to Indonesia's playstyle and how fast they come out swinging out of the gate? Because that's another thing when you're looking at the pacing of the meta, the pacing of these games, they can end pretty quickly. You guys have been watching a ton of different games going on and tournaments going on right now. Like we said, average game time right now is probably under the 15-minute mark, between the 10 to 13 in some cases. And even to the point where, again, like our panelists were mentioning earlier, sometimes it's like some teams they don't even care about the objectives. They won't care too much about them, and they'll just go for the fights.
They'll utilize the objectives just to bait their opponents, go for the team fights, and again, use the objectives to bait out the resources of the opponent. So a lot of teams who just are fully focused on neutral objectives, they actually have fallen and dropped a few games here and there. A lot of the brawly-ish metas have been rising here in the current meta. So I guess, again, we'll just have to see who gets control of the early to mid. The only games that we see actually go and become a comeback are the games with Natan. So I guess if we want to talk a little bit about how the game can turn around completely and how the late game power spike can hit, we have to bring in the question of whether Natan is prio, right? Because I think the main strategy is still early to mid game. If you can stop your opponents from even getting to that mid to late game power spike, you're going to be good. But a lot of teams are really good at just holding back. We've seen this many times, I think in MPL Indonesia as well. I think the term right now is geekable. Is it geekable?
Geekable?
Yeah, what GeekFam did to Onyx, they just held their ground with Eve plus Natan, kept on clearing the waves, and they didn't contest any objectives. They lost like 7 lords, and they won the game with 1 lord.
I think how often that happens, like 7 lords deep into a game,
I think it's only
how
happened
long was
twice
that game? I remember.
It was like 50 minutes, dude. It was the longest game of MPLID.
I was gonna say, when have you ever seen a game go in recent terms, like 50 plus minutes? Even 30 minutes, like 30 minutes.
Even 30 is crazy.
Even 30 is crazy,
Lord, right?
Yeah, and at that point, again, I think that's also why the Eve was talked about so much. I know Leo was mentioning, what was he saying? It was kind of like cat and mouse almost.
Yep, cat and mouse.
You have to have a pretty much set lineup to deal with it. And wait, what did he mention? Who were the mice? Like the Hylos?
The Hylos
was there. Mostly like
I gotta bring in Leo here to talk about the metaphors again, man.
The Tom and Jerry and everything else, but
none of them are villains apparently.
None of them are.
Tom just doing his job. Jerry just wants cheese.
Just wants cheese.
Shout out Leo, man.
Shout out to Leo, Redmar the
Leo
Reptar, and Eterna. We'll have them back on with us again. We're waiting to jump into the game here, guys. So, as we talk about the lineups too, the other thing is there's a Rafaela.
Yeah.
And that works. Yeah, that works pretty good against the Eve. I think Renmar pretty much said, like, for a lot of teams, they think the Rafaela is not a good choice against an Eve, but it actually turns out it works really well. Not only that, but you also get some good movement speed to help if you need to get out of that death box that we always talk about when it comes to the Eve. But also, I want to ask you, because you were signaling to the panel earlier, man. You were like, when they were talking about the gold lane matchup between the Wan for CW, and then for Garo, you have the
Moskov.
Yeah. You said the 50-50.
I think it's 50-50, right? Against most of the marksmen who have blinks, 1-1 is a 50-50 kind of lane. It's very skill dependent. It's a skill matchup. 1-1 versus Moskov, 1-1 versus Claude, for example, as well. 1-1 versus Natan, maybe you could actually bully the Natan a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But for Claude and Moskov, it works a bit differently because they have ways to poke, they have ways to disengage, and most importantly, they have ways pre-level 4 to blink out of that weakness point behind them. So it really comes down to how CW plays the 1-1, how Gato plays the Moskov. That's why I sent over the 50-50 signal for that specifically, for that matchup. Because, again, when we're talking about 1-1 and Moskov, most of the time, it's just a weak side matchup. It's just both of them farming. They probably won't even go and trade a lot. You know, they'll walk up once, throw a Spear of Misery, one will throw skill 1 over. But for the most part, they're just farming. They're just waiting for the power spikes, and most of the fights are going to be happening towards the other side. Strong side XP. That's why we see Uranus. That's why we see Hilda. And I like how you brought up the Rafaela, because I think that's a big concern for Mongolia. The big concern for Mongolia with the Rafaela is the fact that they don't have any initiators except for the Alpha. You can call the Hilda an initiator, but she just goes in.
Kind of just
she's
running for them.
She doesn't really initiate for the team. She just goes in. So it's all on Spear of Alpha. It's all on Alpha's ultimate to get these picks, to get these massive initiations to open up the wars. So it comes down to how they can actually utilize the ult itself. They're going to have to be very, very calculative. Go back and forth, waste some of the abilities, bait some of the resources from Indonesia before they ultimately go for that big initiation tool.
And that's why this is like such a big test for Mongolia too, because again, you know, you're here and it's a single elimination, so you've got to be able to bring your best to game number 1, because it's a best of 3 that you have for you. And you know, when we talk about it, I think that's why it's also so important when we look at, you know, the mid lane trio pick that's going to be coming through for this game. And you know, how does Mongolia actually play against the fact that, yeah, we might actually want to go ahead and if they can get an early lead, especially with an alpha, that would be great. You have sustainability and everything else, and build up off that. But if they slip early on, I feel like that's where you see, and it's not just a Mongolia, like it's not just Mongolia themselves. Indonesia does this to a lot of teams they play against, like, let's be honest.
The death ball.
The death ball strategy, they come out swinging, and even if they just need time for the gold laners to build up, because traditionally that's what's going to happen here, even with a 1-1 in the hands of CW, like, they can make plays elsewhere, and that's, again, where even with the changes, like, you would call it like a nerf towards Suyo, right?
Yeah,
like he was
it's a nerf. It's a nerf.
He was a little insane when he was released.
Ridiculous.
A little ridiculous at that point. Great song though, by the way. Still one of the best.
Yeah. We heard that like on loop for the entire qualifiers.
Entire qualifiers and almost the entire like professional seasons too.
Yeah, that's
once
true.
It came out.
That's true. And MPL ID, MPL PH.
They were blasting that in the speakers, man.
I wasn't complaining the first 3 weeks.
Right? I wasn't complaining
After
at all.
I was like, okay, I don't know, man. I don't know about the song getting replayed 24/7 every single time. But yeah, I do agree. The nerfs actually make it more balanced. It was absolutely ridiculous, Suyo. Not only are you good when it comes to clear, and the early game, your ganks are just insane. You have so much kill pressure, a lot of CC, a lot of sustain, and the execute.
Yeah.
That is just, it's too much. Even up against the opponents, it's too much, right? But the fact that now it's not as easy to go for the 50-50s, it's not 100-0 anymore, I would say.
Yeah.
There's a cap, and I believe the cap is at 500 for the damage towards objectives for the Soul Sever. That's the second skill. That's the execute tap button of the Suyo. But I think more nerfs are to come for sure after maybe the next patch when they're planning it, because this hero still seems busted despite the fact that the nerfs have come through for the objective damage.
And it's funny that because of that, because again, even here, I believe just for IESF, it's a little bit different, where blue side has this like low win rate. You know, it's like what, 30%? I think it's 30% right now for blue side, which is different from if you guys, you know, watching all the MPLs going on and everything, and even some of the qualifiers. We just had a dominant kind of blue side win rate for a lot of the teams. So that's changed too. And again, if you guys missed the draft, happened a bit ago, but Hilda was the first pick. It was the priority.
Chip was banned on blue.
And the chip was banned on blue. Like, even the bans have relatively changed, like in terms of like priority swaps, everything else.
The Phobius was banned on blue. The chip was banned on blue. The Suyo wasn't first pick.
Flip side, we have what? Fanny banned out by
Fanny
Indonesia.
banned out by Red. That's still normal, right?
That's
Red
still
side
normal.
Fanny. But yeah, for the most part, it's really been different, and it's due to the chip nerfs. I think all the chips that have been picked up actually haven't been able to get a win too.
It's funny though, because even though he's been nerfed, like he's still banned out all the time.
Yeah. And it's still annoying to deal with. I wouldn't say it's like it's not an auto win anymore. It's still a massive advantage when you have that much macro power on the map. You can teleport everywhere.
I was gonna say, like, even with the change that they had with his damage there, it's just the fact that the guy can travel across the map and like
shortcut everywhere.
He's got
bro.
shortcut.
He's literally a rival without getting a rival. He's just utility. And on top of that, you just deal so much damage on that hero, right? Early game concussive blast, crash course takes half HP away from the squishies. You get
no
gold
roamers
lane,
doing that, by the way.
Boom, no roamers doing that. You get a stun, you get concussive blast on him, you get him to half HP. And On top of that, the changes that they had with the shortcut, you get shields as well when you
Yeah.
get in. It's like an Angela ult plus a full teleport.
What were they? Okay, let's just say what everybody's thinking. What were they thinking? Let's just.
Hey man, I don't think we can say that when Suyo's still here. You know, like, I mean, at this point, just battle out with the broken heroes, man. It's the battle of the bees.
We might have to get to a point because of the Battle of the Bees and Broken, whatever we want to call it, that we might need some more ban slots here, man.
At this point, we might need those two heroes just to be banned. just take it out.
On the list so that they don't have to use one in the
just
actual
add
ban?
one more with Fanny, because I hate that hero. I know a lot of you guys like Fanny. It's very entertaining.
I was going to say, the audience loves the hero.
They love Fanny. But, hey, do you guys like going up against a good Fanny? Exactly. So,
have you seen many good Fannies?
I've seen a lot of good Fannies.
You shaking their hands?
At this point, Naisu, everybody's a good Fanny. We're in that we're at a point in the game where everybody's a good Fanny.
I don't know.
I'm really good.
Brother, to be
I'm not
honest,
good,
I have not even picked her once in my MLBB career.
That's fair.
That's it. So
you play Gord, right? I play Juan and Melissa.
You play. All I play is Gord, and he got a little adjustment too. A little bit of a buff on his first skill.
It's
but
not Prio, by the way.
He's still do it. It's not Prio. But we did get word, guys. Again, thank you for being patient with us. We're going to be taking another break while they set things up and settle things on stage. So sit tight. We'll be back after this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're landing in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for the World Esports Championship.
In a world where victories can be measured in gold and silver, some things are priceless.
Fully expected, and it is Baron will find him. Can shine for one with a quick trade from Impulse.
Some things are not bought with money.
The base is too open. Now Philippines is now taking the base of Indonesia. Remember their name.
The feeling of standing alongside your fellow countrymen, the emotion, the home crowd, the weight of a whole nation on your shoulders.
Sometimes I get emotional by the fact that I got chosen to be one of the representatives of my country. And yeah, it's just a dream, honestly.
Here it's not just about the game, it's about the pride that unites us. Every match tells a story.
He needs to some missed shots. Sound picking up another one, another headshot. No way! 4 kills! What has happened?
From every corner of the globe. All eyes on WEC24.
Early 1970s. The world was discovering the boundless possibilities of esports. While esports offered endless enjoyment and addictive allure, it lacked a certain depth and a sense of purpose. It needed something more, something larger than a trophy, something beyond individual gratification. That's when a vision emerged. A vision of uniting the world through esports. The International Esports Federation and the World Esports Championship were born. Its mission was clear: to create a stage where nations could unite and compete for the ultimate title, World Esports Champion. For these athletes and nations, the World Esports Championship was more than just a competition, more than just a game. A chance to make history, to leave a lasting legacy, to inspire a generation, and to represent their nation. Over the years, IESF started achieving greatness, year by year. Korea, Indonesia, Israel, Romania, worldwide. The World Esports capital changed, each year expanding significantly, getting bigger and bigger. Fast forward 15 years, IESF was determined to show the world the most valuable World Esports Championship. 140 nations gathered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The WEC24 story. 2024. Saudi Arabia prepares to host the 16th World Esports Championship after a spectacle made in Iași, Romania by IESF for WEC23. New president, new challenges, and quite a bumpy road ahead. As the calendar turned to January, the national qualifiers took place, breaking dozens of records. In a wingspan of 3 months in every nation across the globe, athletes competed to get one step closer to the World Esports Championship and represent their nation on the global stage. However, As fate would have it, the road to WEC24 was far from smooth. Things went south. 2 out of 3 offline regional qualifiers were forced to go online. Even though that barrier occurred, the online regional qualifiers shattered previous viewership records. The hype for WEC24 was real. Meanwhile, Africa. IESF showed just how much potential is hidden in Africa. Over 180 athletes, 17 nations, and thousands of fans. All in one place for one specific reason: esports. The bumpy road came to an end. The slots for WEC24 were secured and everyone was ready. The much anticipated 16th World Esports Championship set sails. WEC24 Day 1.
Alrighty, here we go, ready to jump into the Land of Dawn. Game number 1 here again in this best of 3, the first quarterfinal match. So we're gonna have, thought we were jumping in, but looks like
we're gonna have to wait.
We're gonna have to wait a little bit.
Don't you worry, guys. Please be patient with us. Don't know what's going on here. Another technical pause, it seems.
Hey, look, it's not a revitalize.
It's
Mr.
not.
Luke.
Yeah, it's a purify.
He's got a purify.
It's a purify, and it's a sprint for Aizen. It isn't Hilda revitalize, so already a little bit different to what we are used to coming in for both these teams, for the XP lane at least. Usually it's just all about the revitalize meta, all about out-sustaining your opponents around the neutral objective battles, but it does seem like at this point, maybe they're looking to just outmaneuver them, right? The purify, the sprint as well. Trying to bait out those resources like we spoke of.
Yeah, I guess so. And even that said, I'm just going to look at the emblems real quick. Yeah, so we still have, you know, this is a Rafaela with a focusing mark. Oh, there we go. Now we don't look at all the tier 1, tier 2s. So we got the focusing mark, Rafaela here.
Okay.
Yeah, you got the common emblem over here on Luke for the Uranus pick. Even with that Brave Smite like we talked about. What do you think about the Wan?
Yeah, very aggressive emblem build here. Pull yourself together to get Inspire cooldown to a, you know, just decrease the cooldown of the Inspire just a bit more so you can actually have more pressure in the lane itself. So actually, I won't be too surprised if Indonesia try to play around the strong side in the gold lane if they lose out on the first few neutral objectives and start to bully the Moscow to give CW on the 1-1 a good road ahead.
Yeah, and even with that, again, we're going to have to see if this Rafaela ends up playing its part, playing its role. The fact that you have a focusing mark, though, like, you could actually set things up, because I know we talked about this a little bit before, when it was like, you know, initiation-wise for Mongolia, most of it's going to be the Spear of Alpha. Well, it's still the case, but now that you have that little bit of extra damage from the focusing mark, if they decide to give a call and take the initiative on these fights, go in with an aggressive play using the Holy Baptism to help ensure a Spear of Alpha, that could be an option for them. And again, for Mongolia, part of this is really just going ahead and getting whatever advantage they can when it comes to those skirmishes and those team fights early on and dealing with that. So that could be playing a part to the puzzle. But again, I think this is why part of it was you see some of the purifies come to the table, because both teams have that capability, like to set things up with kind of a snap of the finger. And if you have the Purify, then it at least buys you that extra minute to go ahead and kind of adjust from the initiation.
Yeah, because it's a Purify on the Uranus, Zixora is going to have to be extra careful now when he decides to go for the Spear of Alpha, because if he does go in, he's going to be going into an Onward, possibly an Earth Shatter, a Primal Wrath Edith, or perhaps a real-world manipulation that just gets used on top of the Spear of Alpha that he decides to use as an initiation. So many more tools, I would say, from Indonesia to actually counter the Spear of Alpha. That's why it has to be really, really clean for Zixora and Mongolia. They're going to have to really try to bait out as many resources as possible with the healing, with the movement speed that you get, with the holy healing before you actually decide to commit in these skirmishes.
Even for this, like the fact that you have, you know, we talked about the Hilda quite a bit. Now that this has been popping up in the XP lane, and it's such a dominant pick right now, currently. So you have this, you have great tankiness, Concussive Blast as well. You're looking to just go and pretty much, even at some point, just roam around the map, whereas, again, like we said for Luke, he's most likely just going to be cutting lanes, putting pressure macro-wise, and dealing with that. And even so, like, having a Tenacity emblem there makes him even that much harder to kill and deal with. So we've discussed, we've theory craft. It looks like we're jumping back into the game here. So finally able to kick it off once again. Best of 3, quarterfinal match number 4. And a little update to throw it to our viewers as well. Some of the games that are going on right now. We did get word, I believe, you know, some of the 1-0s are happening. Some of the first games are done, so they should be into their second matches. This one is game number 1, though, for this best of 3. And yeah, we have to get this eventually started here and then find out what's going to happen, because we're going to have to find out who is going to be playing against one of these two teams moving into the semis.
Yeah, we just have to wait. Again, ladies and gentlemen, please be patient with us here. We're trying to fix the issue going on. I'm not too sure what the issue is, but like you mentioned, Naisu, Malaysia versus Turkey. I believe Malaysia is leading 1-0. Just an update for you guys.
That one was a close one, right?
It was a close game 1, man. Turkey were actually winning the final fight, but Malaysia had the waves controlled in a way where Skies could just go in, end the game, get the job done for Malaysia.
Yeah, and I think that one's still, again, maybe the you know, some of this, There's another stream for that one, right?
That was another stream, yeah.
There's
That's,
another
I think,
stream
in the
for that?
Bahasa Melayu stream.
Okay, so if you guys, while we get things situated here, you might want to go ahead and bounce around and see some of the other matches going on while we wait to get this one started, because, again, I'm sure you guys have, your ideas of who are going to be, let's say, top 4, or who's going to end up in the grand finals. And I think, again, when we talk about these teams that have been performing so far up to this point, there's been some obviously surprises. I would love to know, because I don't think we got a glimpse of it even like yesterday. I think a lot of people were shocked with the result that happened with Indonesia and Saudi Arabia, for example. 2-0. 2-0. And I think the last word we got, Saudi Arabia is up 1-0 in their series right now against Ukraine. So part of that is, again, like what did Saudi Arabia do in that matchup against Indonesia? How were they able to get that sweep in and even come up with the adjustments that they had? Because, a team like Saudi Arabia, we've also seen those players quite a bit over the course of just the past year even, and their improvements are obviously there. And I think, as we get through this, we've got, 2 days left here for us to go through. And with that, a lot of surprises can actually happen. So let's find out. Are we jumping back into this game? Okay, we're back into it. We're moving around mid-action right now. Keyboy, go ahead. Just doing some damage early on. This is the thing, too. We haven't seen, the Edith roam as much as we used to in the past.
No, it's been a pick that kind of has disappeared from the meta, man. The Edith in the roam position. Most of the times you use it in XP, but it is still a very, very good flex pick. And this time around, Indonesia will be utilizing Keyboy, the key moment maker of Indonesia, on the Edith. Early on, Zixora, you can already see the advantage, I would say, that the Alpha has now compared to the Suyo when it comes to clear after the hot fix.
It's pretty fast still, right? The Alpha has always been known. Whoa. Okay, mid-action.
Earthshatter and the Flicker earlier there with Albert as well. A little bit of a miscommunication and a misinput, it seems, for Indonesia early on.
Yeah, to start things up, if they can get that first blood, either of these teams, like you said, is going to be very momentum-based. This matchup, more so in the XP lane, kind of a dead matchup. You're not going to really see anyone go down or too much happen between the Hilda and the Uranus unless there's some support through one of the jungles to come up. And it looks like, you at least have Albert on that top side. But eventually that first objective comes up, and that's where you see, who's got these level 4s available, who's got these ultimates that they can actually utilize for the fight. And when it does come through, again, you're looking at the sustainability that a Rafaela provides to this lineup for Mongolia. So if they can play into that, they wait a little bit longer to get things set up, they should have somewhat of an advantage for the fight. But again, as long as they deal with that death box coming out from Sands here. Keyboy doesn't have the level 4 just yet, so he's going to give the information. And right now, both junglers just focusing on the buffs. They'll grab that and then make their way for this objective here. You can already see it. Getting in position, Mongolia. Luke, given the information.
Oh, a lot of damage placed. Spear of Alpha already connecting onto Luke, but again, use it onto Luke. I think Indonesia's going to be very happy. Onward in the Earthshatter, locking him down nice and very, very low. Caught in the real room inflation, but still has a sprint to escape. Keyboy now going to get all that damage placed onto him. First blood over to Mongolia. Luke gonna find an angle for a bit. Go for the forest, Spear of Alpha now towards Albert. We burst it down. Indonesia losing 2. Purify out from Luke. He's trying to dish out some damage to get with Sands. Over to the Turtle. Retribution not ready just yet. Still, Zixora picks it up. Luke picks up a kill back, but it's traded again. 3-1 plus the Turtle for Mongolia.
And that was the pass of coming out from the Rafaela to clean that up. And that was a great take for Mongolia. We were talking about building the momentum early on, and that, man, Miracle, that just proved how much value those heals alone actually really help out. They extended the fight enough where even Luke, as tanky as he is, as even having a tenacity and the Brave Smite emblem, he took quite a bit of damage. And at some point, again, the concentration is going to be gone. You're going to run out of some of the resources that you have, and you just get out-sustained and outgunned. So Mongolia, they get a little bit of lead that they can work around with. A couple, confidence kills in that too. Mid lane.
Wrap used up. Orbit will match it. Real revelation at the Holy Baptism to lock him down as Zixora picks another kill up for Mongolia.
So they pick it up. They move around from this point. Great start. Again, early game, Indonesia can still go ahead and try to find their footing at this point, but with this and how we were just painting the picture leading into this match, when you get a lead like this and you can build into it, either of the compositions are going to work.
Alpha over to Luke, good stun over from Albert. Xora picking up some damage, Earth Shatter over towards Xora, very low, chased out by Luke, but still able to escape for now. Luke picks the kill up, now gonna be terrified, still able to pick up some damage. Our Wilderness already with a flicker out from Ethan. Albert with a snipe, unable to get the full kill down, that's an onward, bringing Eisen back all the way towards the rest of Indonesia. And they're able to get 2 kills on the board.
A good response coming out from Indonesia. Even with the sprint, Eisen not able to get away. And that's, you know, that's always kind of the unfortunate thing when you are playing the Hilda. As great, as hot as she is right now, like Leo mentioned.
Super hot.
Super hot. First picked, by the way, for this blue side for Mongolia in game number 1. You can still get caught, even if you're sprinting out. And again, that's why the Edith was such a good pick, because with the onward, with the Earth Shatter, if you can kind of follow through that, even if the real world manipulation isn't used, you can still catch Eisen if you need to. Really, you can catch multiple people from Mongolia with that. So once again, second objective for the taking, second turtle, half health here.
Xora trying to look for an opening, good onward from Keyboy. As the turtle secured, now it's done over to Eisen. The rotation should be able to get the weakness points. Albert, Soul Sever, picks up the kill. That's a kill and a turtle. Meanwhile though, Garo playing for the Moscow split push up top.
I don't know, man. You know, we talked about Suyo getting some of those nerfs. Still seems pretty good right now. I mean, look at the damage.
Crazy damage. Garo already forced to half HP. Meanwhile, CW given some space in the bottom lane.
All right, with the Valentina that we see so often, if you look across from this, the best choice really for the ultimates to be able to take, yeah, Eisen, oh no.
Good onward over to Eisen. No revitalize, so Indonesia could have gone for the commitment there, but CW will respect it, doesn't know where the rest of the team is.
It's going to be fine. They're just trying to hold down the turrets that they can, but you can see that, right? There's already pressure on the tier 2. Forbid holding on to the Primal Wrath, and that's what I was going to ask earlier. Like, you know, if you're Forbid, you most likely, the majority of the time, you want to have your own real-world manipulation to fight in. This is a big item, big up, by the way. Flask of the Oasis now picked up here for Ethan, helping with that sustainability a little bit more. It looks like they want to fight this out.
Onward just brings down Spear of Alpha as well, just committing down onto Keyboy.
That was some speed too. Like that again, this is what you have when you have a Rafaela on your side. Not only with the heals, even that flask picked up, but also the ability to roam and just kind of move around the map as quick as you want. So they're actually going to go ahead and trade things out here. Top turret goes down, Indonesia claims that one, and Mongolia will take the bottom tier 1 turret now in the bottom lane. So you can already see it, damage kind of falling into place, and this is where Mongolia has to kind of play catch up. They got to be able to get to where they need to be. And this is what we talked about the whole time, guys. Luke will do this all game. You can't ignore him, but also at one point, you've kind of got to deal with him. You can't just let Luke continuously push in the lanes, because then next thing you know, you don't have any turrets left. And now the last turtle of the game comes up. It's started up by Indonesia.
Earth Shatter over Xora earlier. They're going to focus it down. Only got some mana. The Spirit of Alpha already used it. Now Eisen walking up, and the crossbow tag is ready. Xora jumping in the back line, but Sounds will pick up a kill. That's CW in the back, just tearing it apart. And Forbid will be executed by Albert, who jumps in with a blade. Now it's Garo, all isolated. It's a double for Sans and a wipeout for Indonesia.
That was tough, man. That was a not the most synergized initiation from Mongolia, even with the Spear of Misery coming in a little bit late, where Garo just shows up and he's like, oh no, everybody's dead. That's tough to deal with at that point, so Mongolia is going to lose a massive swing in terms of momentum. You can see it, Indonesia gets that last objective, the turtle down, plus some turrets now, and they play into this. Hold on, Luke.
Want to go on to him? Purify out, baits out a whole lot of resources. And the Suyo, Albert, up top, was able to just shove in for the wave to be set up for another siege.
That's that power of the Purify we talked about earlier, especially when it's available. And then you have the Consecration. Here's an item we don't see often. The Malefic Gun is picked up by CW.
Over to Sans, still able to escape the real world manipulation. Should be able to lock him down. We do have a pause. Oof. Does seem like we're going to have to get through this. Don't know what that was exactly, if it was a disconnect. But yeah, Sans,
he's probably gone.
Overextended.
Yeah, he's overextended. So maybe again, we can only speculate. But Sans is probably going to lose his life here. You still have CW around and Keyboard, and it looks like they're on the retreat. Part of that though too is if this little team fight goes in favor of Mongolia here, they're able to get a pick off. again, it's still a big swing that they have to bring back. You're talking about, 4,000 or 5,000 gold lead right now for Indonesia, and this all happened on pretty much that last turtle fight we saw earlier. Like, it was a wipeout, an objective in the hands of Indonesia, and then they go and put pressure on these tier 2s. That's all to open up the opportunity for Indonesia then to take the Lord, and with the lineup that they have, they're able to box out Mongolia. And so I think when you're really looking at Mongolia's chances to go and contest, this Lord that's going to be coming up here in a bit, it's how do we fight into that objective box? Because that's exactly what it is, and that's why Eve is picked up so much. Do you think that this is enough? Like, because we've seen little catch-outs now from Mongolia where they're able to catch Luke, or at least someone. They catch Sans here, by the way, with a little overextension. But does Mongolia, are they in actually position to go ahead and contest in this first Lord?
I don't know. If they get Sans, I don't really think the death timer will be that long to punish over to the Lord, right? There's 81 seconds on the Lord, so it actually gives Indonesia still a lot of leeway. Despite making that mistake, despite making that overextension, they should still be able to recover very, very easily here with the death of Sans. And we'll get through into the game again. 4-bit picks up the kill over to Sans with a stolen RWM. And again, yeah, there's not really much they can do. Maybe put pressure on the mid lane turret, but that's it, right? No neutral objectives to be taken here.
Well, I mean, when you're looking at the lineup, right, and every time you're up against the Eve, that was what the panel even talked about. Do you have enough to play that cat and mouse game? Do you have enough to go ahead and fight for these objectives? And for Mongolia, when you look at them across the board, as long as they approach those fights, that Lord fight that does come up in under a minute here, as a cat and mouse game where you're trying to just hunt for that right moment, trying to, swivel your way through that real-world manipulation, that might be the chance.
A whole lot. Purify is taking a whole lot of damage. Maybe again overextending. Luke will lose his life. That's 27 seconds on the death timers. And again, I don't think it's enough to really give Mongolia a chance to go for the Lord just yet. The Spirit of Alpha over to Keyboy, still able to escape. Real world inflation locks him down. Eisen still able to escape. Keyboy with a flicker forward. Plus the Primal Wrath. Both just baiting out resources from one another.
Mongolia really wants to fight, man. That's what I'm noticing. They just want to go ahead and duke it out, brawl it out with Indonesia. It doesn't matter if they were behind, 5,000 gold earlier on. They managed to pick up a couple kills now off of Sans, off of Luke earlier. So it gives them a little more leeway to work with. The Lord is up now. And this is where we have to see how do they play that macro game too. They're going to send Garu up to deal with that top wave, but they're just going to give it a go on the Lord.
Yeah, getting blitzed now by Zixora. That's the power of the Alpha when it comes to the Lord clear. Luke in the midst of it all. Now it's going to be a knockoff from the Lord. Ethan,
there's a spear.
Escape for a bit. The Spirit of Destruction will land as well, but Zixora picks it up, winning the red tree battle. Eisen very low. Sans still looking for an angle to go for the poke. Primal Wrath from Orbit. CW re-engaging. Luke walking up. CW with the killing spree. Now on the chase onto Ethan. Zixora will be able to get the holy healing from Ethan to disengage, and that's a Lord for Mongolia.
Hey, great pickup objectively for Mongolia to play into. Even to the point where Garu didn't have to follow through with the SOD. Like, he just landed and he's got the call. Like, you know what, we got this under control. Go ahead and farm up and do what you need to do. And that's, again, what they have to do for this game and how they decide to take these fights. I'm surprised with how decisive Mongolia was to be like, you know what, let's just start up this Lord, take it down as fast as we can, and then win that fight. And so they're going to play into this. This is what they've needed for the past few minutes, right? They might still be down in gold, but you can see how you got to respect what this lineup can do against the lineup that Indonesia has. Tier 1 in the mid finally goes down. See Albert also picked up by CW to help with some of that sustainability, that healing coming out from Ethan. Crucial items here too picked up, and you know, even to the sense, like, we haven't seen a huge crossbow of tank just yet. You know, that could change some of these later fights that we get to this. You might see them kind of set things up here.
The thing about the 1-1 here in the current meta, Naisu, is you actually fall off, right? You think about the crossbow of tank, it's a big ultimate, it can be game-changing. But in the later stage, 11 minutes onwards, we're going to see a lot more Winter Crowns, and we already see it for Zixora. He's already picked up the Winter Crown. It's going to be a good way to actually neutralize the crossbow tank threat.
You know, that Winter Crown, it deals with the Wan so well, and I think part of that too is like, if you can just get them, that might be part of the game plan, you know, for Indonesia and for CW alone, is just get that crossbow of Tang off so you can proc, like force the proc with the Winter of Crowns, force Mongolia to use it, and then you follow through after that. So at this point, Boy was in concealed, not going to connect, but the turret does go down.
With an Earth Shatter early, now with the panel around the spell, good Spear of Alpha on the 2. Sora still not going to be caught, pops into a crown. Luke purifies out of there, good bait from Luke. Now it's going to be Garo taking a whole lot of damage. CW just picks him up, 4 minutes flicker forward. CW will be able to survive, getting the shielding, I believe, from the Rose Gold Meteor. He's got Rose Gold, dog.
He's got Rose Gold, he's got everything, he's got the 4 kills. He didn't even have to crossbow of Tang off. He's just doing enough damage at this point too. And so with that, again, Indonesia will go in the swing, now knocking the base turrets of Mongolia in this game 1. They're looking to possibly finish it here.
Another wave to help Mongolia here. Aizen, I don't know if he can clear it up just with Rafaela. 7 seconds on Garo, that's 2 for Zixora. That's 2 base turrets taken down for Indonesia. They must disengage now. They should be happy with that.
Okay.
14 seconds for the Enhanced Lord to spawn in the game.
They buy themselves some more time in the game. Look at this big gap, even between the junglers. We talked about the Alpha and the Suyo matchup quite a bit. We see it so often, but Albert also was just able to scale up really quickly here. Here's another Malefic Gun picked up now by Agaru. So he's got that. You can see how the gold has fallen into place. And now once again, objectively, the Lord for the take, Zixora won't land that spear. So they might be forced off of this. It looks like already Indonesia's going to force them off of the Lord the best they can. You have Garo now down towards the mid. How do they play this out? About a half health on the Lord for now.
It's a window of opportunity with no hold on to Sora. They just burst him down with the real revelation. Keyboy went in for initiation earlier. Now it's a crossbow attack ready. They buy the winner crown, but it's a bit too late as Ethan will just get disintegrated by the crossbow attack. Another chase forward as Albert will try to get the Soul Sever. Not in range, but they've wiped out Mongolia in a way. It's just Garo. There's a few waves coming down. They're going to try to manage it for all of it to crash down together.
They already know. They're getting in formation here. Indonesia ready to end the game. The minions marching in.
Let's see if Garo can make a miracle play. Luke will just tank it up. He gets stunned up, and there's the inevitable wipeout to come for Indonesia in game number 1. It's a 1-0 lead now in a best of 3. Remember, single elimination.
Took us a little bit to get to, but we got through a game number 1. Again, 14 minutes and 13 seconds. Indonesia to go ahead and cap it out for game 1. Again, a great showing from Mongolia in the early portion of the game. They even had some moments where they were able to turn things around in their favor, but then just the power switch happened for Indonesia in the lineup that they had. Whether it was a crossbow of Tang or whether it wasn't, you know, CW was able to pop off and show us that he didn't need it, but then even in that last fight, Mirko, we already saw that he utilized it, and you mentioned it in the play-by-play. Even the Winter Crown wasn't picked up in time enough to proc that, get that going, and live through it, because the damage was just so much. The overloaded just interactions with the real-world manipulation really helped them out. So again, we'll see if the adjustments can be made, but we're going to throw it over to our panelists to see what they have to say about game number 1. Guys, take it away.
Thank you so much, casters. Thank you so much, Naisu, as well as Mirko, as we're back on the panel here for the English broadcast. And once again, it's with me, Eterna. And, you know, let's talk to the panel here. Let's talk to our analysts. What did you think went down in that first game?
Well, that looked like Mongolia early on, feeling comfortable, but then they were just outsmarted, outpositioned, and out-executed when it came to the big team fights. Sounds as real-world manipulation became a big problem for them.
And the aforementioned big dog of the current metagame, the Hilda, suddenly looked like a little scaredy cat. I think Luke has introduced to us, if not the de facto solution, maybe a temporary band-aid to that. The Uranus, it held down the lane more than enough for the Hilda to run away and look for something else. And then even in team fights, sure, in the first 2 or 3 major engagements, it looked like the Hilda had it under control, right? Like, it looked like Aizen was able to re-engage, Aizen was able to find targets that were straggling and then hide into the bush, get some regen backup, some shields. But Luke's Uranus, I can think of one word to describe its performance here, starting from the early to the late. It's inevitable. Like, he was gonna get there anyways.
It's a long-term investment. I mean, in the lane, the Uranus' job was to just temper the Hilda. Early on, we saw that the Hilda, played by Aizen, was able to provide instant gratification once it would join the team fights. But as the game went on, throwback to MSC 2023 when Fnatic Onyx, then Onyx, brought out the Uranus, it had one job: manage the rest of the map, pressure the far lane, and watch your opponent's formations and macro crumble just because one lane was getting pushed by a Uranus.
And I think Luke really did, right? And it's also interesting because when we're thinking about Luke, we usually want him to be on heroes that are more playmaking. But on the Uranus, the impact was definitely there. He was pushing all these side lanes. It was very difficult for Mongolia to actually look for a proper engage when it came down to it. It felt like they were scrambling, like, do we go for this team fight or do we hold on to the lane?
I think it's a crime to say that Uranus on Luke was not a playmaker. It was the worst kind of, the best kind of playmaker for Indonesia, the worst for Mongolia, because everything Luke does, Mongolia have to account for him. Is he here? If he's not, okay, we can do this. Is he dead? If he's not, watch out, he might put stacks of the Ionic Edge on you and you might die. If I'm not mistaken, Luke has what? 3 kills? 2 of those were on ZXaura. 2 of those were on the Alpha. If you can use an XP laner to answer a jungler just like that, I'll take that deal.
And you can see with the itemization of Luke, that will be a big struggle. Again, we mentioned earlier in the panel, the damage profile for Mongolia is not going to be enough to mess up this Uranus. In lane, the best thing that Aizen could do was again to provide the instant effect come the team fights in the lane close to theirs. Every time Aizen would dish out a full combo, concussive blast, first kill, max out the second, the Uranus is just gonna heal through it. But then as it went on, the Uranus was just almost unkillable. Yes, eventually you saw the little adjustments by Mongolia. Malefic gun onto the Moskov so that it can free hit a little bit further. I mean, the true damage of the Alpha will always be there, but even though you've already done enough to bring the Uranus low, what happened to the rest of your team? The Eve was there to damage. CW, deathless, and had a very comfortable game. Even Keyboy looked like a killer with his positioning and the timing of his Primal Wrath.
Now, it also begs the question, right? You were talking about the Malefic gun earlier on. Was that a wise item to go for?
Yeah.
Considering, I mean, Garo on the Moskov, he was the sole damage dealer for that team, right? I mean, despite there being a Valentina, wouldn't he be the one to be expected to get through the Uranus and its regen?
Malefic gun is an item now. I wouldn't call it a good or bad item. I see it built on like 80% of marksmen these days. It's because the way that it provides the range, the penetration, and just sheer damage output, you can't beat it, like economically speaking. But in this case, when your job is to, again, maybe, I'm not in the room where Mongolia talked about the game plan, but I don't know if he's the only one that they've assigned to take down Luke, right? But if you're talking about that responsibility, I don't think the Malefic gun was the bit. Like, I don't think it does enough to take down the Uranus alone.
Yeah.
I would have gone for the Halberd.
Yeah, they needed, along with that, a little bit more range. Yeah, Malefic gun was there, but if they had a longer range mage, it might have been a little bit easier to provide a little bit more problems to the Uranus. However, you do get why they picked the Valentina. They picked the Valentina because you're thinking, okay, we can steal the real-world manipulation. That's the long range we have.
And the Edith.
Yeah, and the Edith also. But we barely felt the effect of the Valentina stealing those 2 big-time ultimates. They weren't able to make the most out of it.
And that leads us to a problem that Mongolia have to deal with immediately, right now, game number 2. 2 things. Number 1, we can't play that Hilda Gambit anymore. Indonesia have the solution. Number 2, how do we fix our draft's innate weaknesses? One weakness would be the damage profile. It's hard to account for when you're mid-draft. Suddenly, you're at pick 4, or the last 2 picks for whatever phase you're in, and you're like, oh, we don't have burst. You gotta consider that. And number 2, find a way to not be reactive.
Yeah.
A part of me thinks phase 1, Mongolia won the draft, but when they finished up and you look at it 5 versus 5 and you watch the game, it was Indonesia calling the shots regardless.
But like, remember in the early portion of the game, it looked like Mongolia had a little control, right? They were picking up, skirmishes here and there. They were able to get pickoffs here and there. So when we're talking about control, why did that change?
Yeah, well, I think we have to boil down to what Sans and Indonesia has been doing for his hero pool. He's picked up 3 heroes mainly before today. Lo Yi, the Eve, and the Angela. Well, still 3. He's still within that same hero pool. So that shows control in different aspects. Lo Yi, of course, a crowd control in the team fights, but then control all around the map. Eve, you know what she does. Angela, it's that hero that we don't like to go up against in our ranked games, because just when we think we're gonna get killed, suddenly there's a hard guard, and then boom, all the efforts that we have are wasted. So that begs to show what Indonesia's approach into the drafts have been so far. Control in different aspects, so that sounds like a mastermind from afar can just be like Eve's ultimate. He's just like playing chess. You go here, you go there, then we're gonna punish them like that. So if you know that you're going up against a team like that, you need formation breakers. If you're gonna ban the Gata Kacha blue side, pick up a Hilda first, that's an easy setup for an E. So you have to approach it from what is Sans in Indonesia, thinking about within that mindset control.
Wait, so are we thinking that Sans is one of the main pillars to Indonesia right now?
That's stating the obvious.
Yeah.
Sans has been a
Interesting.
pillar
100%.
for Indonesia, for Fnatic Onyx, for MLBB and that whole region of the world. I'll even say it now. I think Sans, the way he plays, affects how even Malaysia and Indonesia, how Malaysia and the Philippines play the mid lane. That's how good Sans is. So now that you mentioned it, you're right. After that Hilda, immediately the answer was the Eve. So they denied it directly. So this also speaks to the genius of their coach and Coach Adi.
He was upfront, you know,
Very vocal.
just monitoring the players in the teams while the game was playing.
Very vocal
So
indeed.
yeah, he has been a big influence to that. But I find this really interesting because I think a lot of people have been discussing the fact that Sans has kind of deteriorated in his performance.
Whoa, it's a big word.
Well, deteriorated. Another way to look at it potentially maybe is that he's evolved this in his game. The mages for the longest time that we've associated with Sans are the mages that he himself can be like, all right, time to carry the team on my back, do something crazy. Well, this time alone, it's just now it's Sans playing with the rest of the team, the entirety of the team. That, although there were some moments where it seems like there might be a little bit of disconnect between Kiboy and Sans, Kiboy a little bit too fronting, Sans not completely just there at the right time. Once they sharpen that up, again, the fact that they've literally only played 3 heroes in the mid for Sans just goes to show how confident they are in their approach so far in IESF.
Agree with that?
Yeah, no, I'll never see Sans as a lesser player.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Because that's, deteriorating is a huge word. Like, as a non-Indonesian, I'm offended for all the Indonesian fans of Sans.
Okay,
But
that's great.
yeah, no, I think it just came in the form of a question. And I think Renmar's right in saying that Sans is now a team player. So it's more clear whenever he's missing these little beats between him and his jungler, him and his roamer. And I think that's something that will, work out all the more in the coming days of the playoffs.
Yeah. So he's evolved in his gameplay.
Yeah, evolved, exactly.
Evolved in his gameplay. Okay. I'm thinking about it and I'm just like, yeah, that's good. Because he himself has actually mentioned in interviews, he's been saying like since, all these jungler assassins have been, popping up into the jungle, it's
was
been very
once a jungler
difficult.
too.
Exactly. So he wanted to be able to hold on to that killer instinct in the mid lane, but things have gotten a little bit harder for him since the assassins came back. So now that we're shifting kind of back into the fighters in the jungle, I don't know. I would have expected him to go maybe a little bit more aggressive this time.
Oh, well, maybe the aggression again has evolved in what that aggression means. Because this aggression, I'm looking at if you are a team that has prioritized mainly Loi, Eve, Angela, that's a different kind of aggression. That's someone else being aggressive for you. Or that's you telling the team, all right, here, we're going to go together like this, follow me. So in a way, that's why I want to see it more as an evolution of what Sans has become. Because it's no longer like, nah, I can do this. It's, hey, we do this together. It's a little kumbaya moment for the star mid laner of Indonesia.
All right, and it looks like we are ready for game number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, as we're going to break it down once again for the drafts. Now, are we expecting both of these teams to opt for the same sides later on? But before that, it looks like, a little bit of an update for you guys. We did mention that there are going to be games that are not streamed out there. So this is the score that we're getting. Turkey 1-1 against Malaysia right now in that best of 3. Saudi Arabia actually won it 2-0, so Ukraine is out
That's right.
of playoff contention.
GG well played to Team Ukraine as well as to Argentina. They got swept by Team Philippines.
Wow.
It looks like we're getting a little bit closer and closer to what our brackets in the playoffs looked like last year in Romania. It was Saudi Arabia and the Philippines who faced off in the semifinals before the grand finals. Again, this could be the potential revenge of Saudi Arabia because Philippines sent them to the lower bracket last year, but now there's no lower bracket. They send you to the third place if ever you lose.
You can't climb up.
You can't climb
Your
up.
cap is third place.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm happy to see, on behalf of all of the Turkish and the Malaysians, I'm happy as an MLBB fan to see this go all the way. There's a lot of history between Team Malaysia and Team Turkey, better known as, well, then Fireflux and Selangor Giants, in this very same block. Like in a building just about a few feet from here, they had a great 5-game series.
Because we had a little bit of a peek into their first game, and it looked like Malaysia, they were dominating.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right?
So what happened in game
Exactly.
Yeah, well, like we had to watch what was happening in our broadcast.
We had to do a job.
Yeah, we have to go back and check out what potentially happened in Turkey and Malaysia. I'm pretty sure we can talk about that later on, maybe, if ever. I mean, at the end of it all, we won't be able to get to see it. We weren't going to see it, but
why couldn't that matchup have happened in the semi? So at least we see the other drop to the third place match, right? But
That's
no,
true.
That's the nature of the beast. That's just how the WEC24 playoffs bracket goes.
And you know they're going all out. Remember the prize pool, 160K USD, guys.
Yeah, it's country. It's pride for your country. I mean, of course we have our club championships in the MLBB space. This is our country world championship. You know, it's country pride. And lately, I mean, of course, for both of these two, with Turkey and their achievements recently, they are a top 4 team in the world, top 4 country in the world. And now they look to push that envelope, go even further. While Malaysia, of course, they're trying to solidify that is their #MY era.
That's right.
So hopefully, whatever happens in that game 3, if we get the recap maybe later on or a little teaser of what happens, hopefully it becomes a very competitive game number 3 in that space. But hey, we still have this one, which I wouldn't be surprised if this goes game 3 on all the way as well.
Let's go back to game number 2, right? Because we're heading into the drafts now once again, ladies and gentlemen. Mongolia versus Indonesia, and it looks like, yeah, they're on the same side again. So Suyo, Hilda, going to be the choice of ban here from Mongolia. Jushin and Matilda. So the big change here, the big plot twist here, is the Hilda ban.
That's right. The Uranus only came out from Luke because of the Hilda. If you put any other XP later there, it wouldn't make sense to put a Uranus planted against this pick that Eisen will be picking up. So now the chip is still at large. The chip is still at large. Where's it going to show up? Red 3 or blue 3? There's no way it's coming through.
Unless, I mean, it has shown in the past before that even if the chip would be completely open, teams would still say, yeah, we don't need to. But Mongolia decides to ban it on their side. It's a good call up against a team like Indonesia. And see, this is what I mean about Indonesia's, again, going back to the idea of playing around like sounds and that kind of play style. The heroes that we mentioned will struggle up against Jushins and Matilda. The will make it hard for Kiwoy to get into position and find the right timing for Sans to poke and provide vision. The Matilda is built to break formations, get past the front lines, which means you make Kiwoy react and you make Indonesia struggle, you take out the Fanny. So Mongolia will go ahead and pick up the Phoveus on their side. And if ever Kiwoy would want to pick up the Cho, that's totally fine. You get the vision, you get to be aggressive. They will still rush the Eve though, which still makes sense and is perfect for what Indonesia wants to do with their playstyle. And the Alpha, the instant response to the Phoveus. So right now, this Phoveus pick is not happy.
What do you think?
It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it.
What about Gatot here, guys?
The Gatot is open, that's right.
Yeah,
Hylos too. There's so many rogue picks that, here's the thing, Indonesia don't care about. They're going to save this red 5 for Luke again.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. I think the fights that Mongolia have chosen to pick against Indonesia partially might be the wrong one. And here's a breakout jungler for WEC24.
Yeah.
We've seen maybe 2 or 3 X-Borgs a day
Yeah.
Out of groups.
So back in the day, Export was a really good counter towards Alpha in the jungle. You know, a really good counter towards heroes that are very sustainable. How does it fare in this meta right now?
Well, yeah, because of the rise of more beefier lineups, high defense lineups, the X-Borg, because of the poke damage that it can deal with, has become the main answer to that. Now, there's an interesting relationship between the X-Borg and the Eve. Some people would argue that the Eve will be able to take down the Farago armor quickly. Some people would argue that the X-Borg actually makes it sad for the Eve to team fight, because you bring down the box, that's an easy target for the X-Borg to go, hey, I know where to put down my last insanity.
Right there.
I don't care to fight under your ultimate, because you will still eat my ultimate. That'll be a big trade. You force the Eve low, and then that's a chance to go. But the problem right now is that you're up against the 1-1. And if Indonesia decides to pick a tankier frontliner here, yeah, it might be able to take some damage, but it supplements it well enough that the X-Borg might actually not be that big of a deal. Again, I'm going back to the idea of around the Eve right now, that Mongolia in game number 1 didn't fight well around it. Now, Tigreal's open.
Edith banned out, Luoyi banned out as well in the second phase. What are we looking at for the mid laner for Mongolia here? Luoyi's gone.
Valentina's
Jushin's
still
gone.
open.
Valentina.
Valentina's
Do
still
they
open,
want to
but
do that again?
It's proven that it's tough. It's proven. The Edith has been banned out, so there's less of a reason for the Valentina to want to be picked up here.
Exactly.
So something tells me it's not the Valentina anymore.
What are we looking at? Vixana, maybe?
Vixana Aurora.
Yeah, somewhere along those lines. If this is a slow frontliner, and if they want to provide it even more problems, they might even opt to go for a Lilia. And with the Lilia presence, that might mean that the 1-1 has a lot of things to deal with. So, you pick up the Gatot Kacha here at 4th, because if you decide to go for a backline mage, the formation of Mongolia, with how scrappy their team fight already is with the X-Borg and Phoveus, the backliner mage will not have a good time.
Yep.
It still might end up becoming the Aurora and Vixanas of the world that you mentioned, but I would like Mongolia to really highly consider the Lilia here.
And what makes it more interesting is this Gatot doesn't show where it goes. You still don't know. It could be Kiboy, it could be Luke. And that's what I said, right? You leave that red 5 for Luke, because Luke is the wild card.
Yeah.
Luke is the X factor in Team Indonesia. Anything he does and any play he makes affects everything on the map.
Yeah, that's been the template that Indonesia has been drafting with, right? Using that flexibility between Kiboy as well as Luke as we get into the final 2 picks from Mongolia. And that's going to be a Lunox as well as a Khalid. Very interesting.
We've seen one more Lunox mid in the groups. I'm not so sure if I would say I support it.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, if we're talking about heroes that can kind of fend for themselves in the mid lane, like a Lilia, a Lunox does have that, especially at level 4.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have the brilliance to save yourself, you have that capability, but it goes down to the classic idea from that game number 1, where this looks like a lot of pressure right now, just still on the Moskov. And now you have 3 tanky frontliners. And even though, yes, you think of Lunox as the one to shred down front lines, and hey, honestly, surprisingly enough, the X-Borg is a little bit happier. This is still a tough game for a Lunox. And the lineup that has a Lunox and a Moskov together as your main damage dealers, that now it falls back to this 1-1 game for CW might actually be even better than the last one.
I'd say it's better for the X-Borg, worse for the Lunox, and that's weird because the X-Borg came in the draft first. So it seems like the priorities for Mongolia can only really be described, could only really be explained by them. Us from a spectator standpoint can only assume what they're thinking of when they picked up this Lunox, because I'll tell you now, it's very dangerous. It's sure gonna save itself via the brilliance. Sure, it's gonna shred down the good, the front liners good, but if you don't get there, what happens?
What happens? I guess we're going to have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen, as we throw it over for game number 2 towards the casters. Naisu, Mirko, take it away.
Thank you so much for our panel once again for breaking down the draft here. Game number 2. As a mid lane specialist myself, Mirko, I have to say, I don't know how this Lunox is going to work out.
Okay.
I don't know
I thought
if
you were
I'm
going to tell him to play Gore or something.
I wouldn't go as that crazy, you know? As much as I love him, but with the current things, how they stand, I'll still pick him, but that doesn't mean he's the right pick here. Now the Lunox, what do you feel about it? I mean, I think that's all you can do. Like, you've got an escape plan with the Brilliance. You've got some, you know, damage you can penetrate through some of those defenses in the front line. But even then, I think then you just kind of fall off after that.
I think I understand the idea behind Lunox though, right? The fact that for Indonesia, they just have multiple frontliners to deal with Mongolia's draft. They needed someone to actually shred one of the frontliners as well. Because if you take a look at the Xborg and the Moskov, you shred down these frontliners, but it's not an instant kind of delete button, right? For the Lunox, I would say you kind of have that instant delete button, especially in the mid to late game.
Like you got one job.
You got one job. When a Terizla goes in or the Gato Kacha, you target him down. He's super shredded. By the time the guy is dead, everybody would already be kind of chunk low by the Xborg, would have full stacks, and the Moskov would just be chunking them out.
Well, we're going to find out if they can chunk it out or not. Jumping into the Land of Dawn again, game number 2 in this best of 3. Can Mongolia go ahead and even out this series? Again, it's a single elimination, so if this is a sweep by Indonesia, Mongolia will have to dip out of here for the WEC 2024 for IESF. And similar things, you know, you're going to see this kind of fall into place in the early portion of the game, and I think once again, that is always going to have to be what we look to see if Mongolia can do. Can they get their footing early on? And even if they do that, like they did in the previous game, they've got a whole lot to deal with. And this time around, it is a Gatakacha, which we have seen do so much for teams that draft this hero in, and with the Revitalize. So we can see a fight breaking out here this early on already, but it looks like they just post up. Mongolia will go ahead and get that Lethal Wanderer and set things up again.
It's just a battle for the Lethal Wanderer. Bit of an advantage now over towards Xborg. Sans getting quite low. Good taunt over to Forbid. Albert's moving over. Ethan putting some damage back on Sans again. Albert not level 4 just yet. Ethan will flicker out, respecting the possible instant level 4 that Albert can get.
Yeah, that's troublesome because, again, you saw there, if Albert wanted to go ahead and Spear of Alpha, he probably could have caught him, but they decided to be a little bit more disciplined, take things in their favor where they can. And the fact that Ethan doesn't have a flicker right now, you know, it puts him in a kind of precarious situation even with this. So look at this, they're trying to go for Sans.
Last Insanity, flicker out from Sans. They bait out a big resource before Turtle 1 spawns in the game.
All right, again, objectively, the team that usually gets this first objective does kind of have that upper hand in the early game. They build through it. You could see both teams kind of going and trying to make the plays if they can. Mongolia has been the aggressor, I would say, throughout the series. A lot of the times, they've been trying to get the early advantage going on, but they've just got to go ahead and respond now. So Albert, he'll start up the turtle. Ethan gives the information. This could just be a situation where Mongolia maybe gives this away. He's not level 4 yet, so half health from the turtle.
They reset it. Kibo is so far away. Good penalty zone from Luke to stop him. Sans will be the one to pick up the turtle. Now as Ethan goes in for the healing Forbid. Jumps into the back line, but first blood will be claimed by Sans as Albert deals with Sixora, who did not have the Faraga armor. Now it's Aizen all isolated. Has a demonic force. Brox to go for the Infernal Pursuit, but will be bursted down before he can even get this next one. Forbid in the mid lane now zoned away. And Indonesia pick up 3 free kills and a turtle.
Mirko, I know you saw it, the flicker forward coming out from Forbid, and then there was, you're waiting for the damage to come through, and then you're like, oh wait, it's not there. It's not there. It's not there for the Lunox, even against Sans trying to pull through, and even with that, they just got a whole lot in the hands of Indonesia off that first objective plus these kills, and this is what we always talk about. When this team, when Indonesia, their players get the advantage, they will not let up. Mongolia has shown us that they like to fight even when they're down. So they could still come out with a response from this, and that might mean that, hey, Ethan, now that he's got that level 4 available, he might be the one to start things up with the Raging Sandstorm. He had to burn his flicker earlier on, so they didn't really have many tools to be approaching that first objective. And once again, it's all about scaling. They're scaling.
Exactly.
We already got a preview of the damage. It's not there right now.
Nope. It really isn't. And that was the big concern, I guess, for Mongolia, right? Even though we see what they were going to do, what they can do with the composition, it relies heavily on mid to late. Luke, penalty zone in the bottom lane, unable to connect onto Aizen. Good spacing there. But back to the point, it's all about getting to mid to late, and I honestly feel like after losing its first turtle, they should try to respect Indonesia here. Second turtle onward, maybe look to go for some trades around the map, because if you just go and brawl it out against Indonesia with this big of a lead early on, it'll be very, very tough. You can already see Ethan put some damage down onto Albert, who wants to fight it out. He's an alpha who's a level ahead of the enemy jungle.
How do we feel right now about Khalid Rome? Is it only working for certain teams, certain players?
I don't know. I don't know about Khalid Rome, man. It's literally just an initiation tool, and you want to buy a little bit more time too, technically, with the pick. But there's so much CC for Indonesia. When you heal up, you can't even heal. And this is going to be a free turtle over to Indonesia. No steal for Mongolia. They're just going to have to concede this, but there's no trades being made on the map by Mongolia. Indonesia are just doing what they want. Avatar the Guardian connecting now. Even Purify, the layering from Lucas. He goes into the penalty zone to the back line, but Zixora plus 4 bits damage will be enough to deal with FCW. Pops in the Inspire, gets out. And Zixora will just have to burn out the last Insanity. They only lose Luke out for that.
They only lose Luke, but I'm also, you know, at least Mongolia punishes that, because that's a very aggressive play. Under the tier 2, under 5 minutes in, but they do this because they want this objective.
No, Purify Garo, they were setting up for that, and now it all becomes worth it, losing Luke to burn out the Purify for them to dive and get a tier 1.
Almost there. Come on. Okay.
Okay, they want to save it.
They delayed a little bit. Eventually, that's going to go down. But yeah, it's all part of the plan, Mirko. Like, again, they initiated under the tier 2. They forced out some resources. They stay, they hang around, and then they capitalize it after that. So what ended up being, you know, not such a bad situation for Mongolia ended up being actually pretty bad. There's the turret going down as well. And so, as we were saying, you know, Indonesia will go ahead and continue to put pressure where they are able to find it. And right now, it's kind of all across the map. The next thing they're looking for here is the mid lane. If they can get the 3 for 3 on the turtles, Mongolia is in a position where do they have to think, do we have enough damage to actually fight this through? Can we win a team fight against Indonesia for that next turtle, or do we just let it go? We've seen teams do that before too, where they don't go and they're not able to get any of the turtles, because the biggest obstacle in front of Mongolia right now is that zone that Indonesia is setting up.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about Sans. Like, just the fact that you have a Gatakacha and a Tarizla alone in the front line is why, again, they picked up, while we thought they picked up the Lunox to hopefully, you know, burst down one of these tanky guys, and they should be able to, but later on. I don't think they're quite there yet. But it looks like Mongolia, flicker burned.
Look at the targeting from Sans, always putting the Void Blast onto Zixora. Now, RWM, last incentive to be used, but he's going to be very, very low. Keyboy jumps into the Avatar, and again, it's CW, who's just wreaking havoc. Zixora backed away by Keyboy. He's the one who's zoning the X-Borg. This is the pick to counter the Gatakacha, but Zixora, I don't know where he can go. Sans will be rotating as well. Keyboy will be the one to get the kill. Though it is traded, it is definitely worth it for Indonesia, 4-1.
Again, as I was asking before that broke out, is this the right moment that Mongolia wants to fight, to contest? No, it wasn't. That was not the fight you wanted to take, and now you get further into the hole that Indonesia has been building up. And you're going to find himself, even Albert, confident enough.
1v4, Albert, I don't know if you want to take this. The Chaos come through Luke. Penalty zone only onto Aizen. And it's Mongolia who have to back away from 2 members of Indonesia.
So they back away. Again, some resources are down here. Now the Malefic Gun picked up by CW. They'll go ahead and work in on these tier 2s. That's the next site for them in Mongolia. Like I was saying, they've got to kind of check themselves. You know, stop trying to force some of these fights for a little bit until you're ready for them, because even so, whether it's a Lunox, whether it's a Smozkov, they have not been able to find favorable fights. Look at this pressure here. Spear of Alpha already going to be used from Albert. Enough to go ahead and just put pressure enough to get these tier 2s. Even the Brilliance being used right now. And I'm sure Forbit's thinking, man, you know, was this the right pick for this lineup? Because they can't really do much but just to watch this. Good push, though. Trying to get something out of anything up top.
I don't know, though. They're going to get a tier 1, but I think for Indonesia, they're very happy trading the tier 1 for 2 tier 2s.
Shields popped as well.
Shields popped. Holy defenses already down for Mongolia. Luckily for them, I would still say they have pretty good wave clear. RWM to chunk them away, to try to zone them away, to try to take this turret without utilizing great raging sandstorm from Ethan, but it gets bursted down. CW starting to kite away now. The last insanity gets used up. Luke uses the penalty zone to kite away, and they have been able to do it. Great kite back from Indonesia. 2 of the frontliners down, and it's in the perfect time for the Lord to spawn in the game.
Mirko, if they weren't down to 7,000 gold, that could have been different for Mongolia. It was probably the best initiation they could hope for after Indonesia started it, but they're just outgunned right now in terms of the items and economy. So that's an objective secured, a Lord secured for Indonesia. And if only Mongolia had a little more firepower in the exchange, they probably could have gotten a couple kills out of it. But like you mentioned, great kite back and just disengage from that fight, from that setup. You know, Ethan couldn't have hoped for a better Raging Sandstorm in that situation, but now they have to go and prep up Can they defend this? We're under the 10-minute mark. The shields are already down. They were worked on earlier. Here's the Lord in the mid lane.
Let's see how to utilize it. Lord of the mid lane going to be able to charge into the base. CW getting rid of the Holy Defense up top, as that's going to be a Spear of Alpha over to Xora, taking the Faraga armor away. Also an RWM, interestingly, already used up. CW unable to get the turret in the mid lane, but it is already very, very low. The look towards the second empowered waves to try to get this turret down. Again, for Mongolia, they have pretty good wave clip. Penalty zone. Luke catching Ethan. Now the Avatar of the Guardian. They all just crash down onto Mongolia. It's still a lot of damage placed down. That's a shutdown. CW taking out, but look at Albert on this Alpha, who's an absolute monster at this point. A snowballing Spear of Alpha. As he goes in, Xora, even with the Faraga armor, will not be able to survive. Sounds of the Poke still trying to zone Garo away. 2 more base turrets to deal with.
2 base turrets left. They got a couple waves pushing in. 4 members right now. Indonesia, Luke picking up a Winter's Crown. They could possibly still look to push this in. They're going to have to clear the waves out. Rest of the members from Mongolia do come up. So right now, they hold on into this game at number 2. They don't want to get swept here. Making Indonesia work for this win. Once again, Mongolia trying to just hold things together. It's slipping out of their hands, though. 10,000 gold behind at this point. Really looking to see where this Lunox plays its part, plays its role. Yes, they defended. Yes, they're still in their base. They got 1 base turret. But is this the time? We're 11 minutes in. We already talked about that mid to late game for this lineup from Mongolia. But when you have a 10,000 gold deficit to work for, it gets even more grim. So the fight's here into the jungle.
Oh, CW still able to cut away now. Oh, the Demonic Force connects. CW will be chased down. Crossbow Tang from CW to turn it around again. And the translation over from the Crossbow Tang over to Eisen as he goes in for the Infernal Pursuit. It'll be Albert in the mid lane together with Luke escorting this one melee minion. That's a penalty zone to bait out the Purify. Now the Spear of Alpha as they go for the shred onto Garo. So many turret shots tanked away by Indonesia. But it's a given for this full tanky lineup. Now a taunt to take Forbid down. He will go for the Brilliance, but Mongolia will be knocked out from the IESF playoffs of MLBB. Indonesia move forward.
Indonesia, quick work here. Now game number 2, 12-minute mark, just under it. Able to close things out. And again, the panel talked about the draft, and I think that's really what showed the weak point here for Mongolia. They just weren't able to utilize the game plan that they came in here with. They lacked the damage, they lacked the ability to just respond to how much initiation came from the fact that you have a Drizla and of course a Gatacontra starting things up. Again, fist bumps all around. These players are getting very familiar with themselves, by the way, for all the times they faced against each other internationally for the different MLBB tournaments. But again, Indonesia is always that team that teams look to aspire to beat. I would say one of the top teams, of course, just internationally for MLBB at this time around. Again, Mongolia not able to get over that massive obstacle that is Indonesia.
And for Indonesia, their next matchup will either be Malaysia or Turkey. We're going to have to wait for the results on that matchup, whether Malaysia has got it done or if it's Turkey who was able to get that win. Oh, Malaysia won. We got that information earlier, just right there.
Malaysia won?
Malaysia won 2-1 in game number 3. So Indonesia versus Malaysia will be our semi-final match.
And then I think we also have
Saudi Arabia versus Philippines.
Saudi Arabia versus Philippines. That's going to be a fun one, man. Either way, like, again, we're getting to the point where, this happens pretty quickly. If you guys have been watching, trying to watch and pay attention to all the streams for the MLBB Open, we've only got 2 days. So it's today and it's tomorrow. We find out who the champion is going to be tomorrow. But right now, we still got 2 matches that should be on the live stream today. And I don't know, it's looking like Indonesia's ready to go to the grand final the way that they played this one. If they can get there, again, formidable opponent ahead of them. And this is where, we start to see some of these powerhouse teams that might have had, a little bit of a different roster because we're talking about ISF than what you're used to seeing them play under their own organization banners and everything else. But ultimately, the play style is pretty much the same. Indonesia, we already talked about it. They're going to come in swinging, coming in hot, getting the advantage if they can, and that's exactly what they did here again.